Good Saturday afternoon, my friends. My name is Melissa from Melissa's Struggling Walk with Jesus. I am here sharing the Word of God with you using the Amplified Holy Bible and the Navigator's Bible Reading Plan. I am in month 5. We are starting a new book. We're on reading 14D, and we're going to start the book of 2 Samuel, and I'm going to be sharing in this video chapter 1 and 2. So chapter 1, the title is David Learns of Saul's Death, and it says, Now it happened after the death of Saul, when David had returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, that he stayed 2 days in Ziklag. On the 3rd day a man came unexpectedly from Saul's camp with his clothes torn and dust on his head, as in mourning. And when he came to David, he bowed to the ground and lay himself face down in an act of great respect and submission. Then David asked him, Where do you come from? And he said, I have escaped from the camp of Israel. David said to him, How did it go? Please tell me. And he answered, The people have fled from the battle. Also, many of the people have fallen and are dead. Saul and Jonathan, his son, are also dead. So David said to the young man who informed him, How do you know Saul and his son Jonathan are dead? And the young man who told him explained, By chance I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on his spear, and the chariots and horsemen of the Philistines were close behind him. When he turned to look behind him, he saw me and called to me, and I answered, Here I am. He asked me, Who are you? I answered him, I am an Amalekite. And he said to me, Stand up facing me and kill me, for terrible agony has come over me. Yet I still live, and I will be taken alive. So I stood facing him. In verse 10, And I stood facing him and killed him, because I knew that he could not live after he had fallen. Then I took the crown which was on his head and the band which was on his arm, and I have brought them here to my Lord. Check out 1 Samuel chapter 31, verse 4. All right, in verse 10, where it says, and killed. So the young Amalekite story conflicts with the description of Saul's suicide as recounted in 1 Samuel chapter 31, verses 3 through 6. He must have, at the very least, witnessed Saul's death, since he was able to obtain the crown and the armband. He apparently expected that this story about administering the death blow, whether true or not, would result in some sort of a reward or honor. And also in verse 10, where it says band, this band or armlet was not jewelry, but it was a piece of armor worn around the arm. All right, verse 11. Then David grasped his own clothes and tore them in mourning, and so did all the men who were with him. Verse 12. They mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and Jonathan his son, and for the Lord's people in the house of Israel, because they have fallen by the sword in battle. In verse 12, where it says Israel. In general, the sons of Israel or Israelites refers to all the people, male and females, of the various tribes descended from the 12 sons in Genesis chapter 35, verses 23 through 26, of Jacob, which is later renamed Israel by God. In verses concerning things such as warfare or circumcision, sons of Israel or Israelites usually refers only to the males. Tribes of ancient people were identified by the name of their founding ancestor. Therefore, this same general rule applies when referring to individual tribal groups. For example, the sons of Reuben, Reubenites, and so throughout. All right, verse 13. And David said to the young man who informed him, "Where are you from?" And he answered, I am the son of a foreigner, a resident alien, and a sojourner, an Amalekite. And David said to him, How is it that you were not afraid to put out your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? David called one of the young men and said, Go, execute him. So he struck the Amalekite, and he died. Verse 16, And David said to the fallen man, Your blood is on your own head, for your own mouth has testified against you, saying, I have killed the Lord's anointed. In verse 16, where it says your blood, for example, that means your death is your own fault. All right. 2 Samuel chapter 1, starting with verse 17, the title goes into David's dirge for Saul and Jonathan. And it says, Then David sang this dirge, a funeral song, over Saul and his son Jonathan. And he told them to teach the sons of Judah the song of the bow. Behold, it is written in the book of Jashar. In verse 18, where it says the book of Jashar. This is an early poetic account of the wars of Israel and the heroic acts of the warriors. All right, verse 19. Your glory and splendor, O Israel, is slain upon your high places. How the mighty have fallen. Tell it not in Gath, proclaim it not in the streets of Ashkelon, or the daughters of the Philistines will rejoice. The daughters of the uncircumcised pagans will exult. Verse 21. O mountains of Gilboa, let not dew or rain be upon you, nor fields with offerings. For there the shield of the mighty was defiled. The shield of Saul, dry, cracked, not anointed with oil. In verse 21, where it says, O mountain. This is an expression of the grief David curses the place of Saul's death. Also in verse 21, where it says anointed. It was necessary to lubricate leather shields with oil to preserve them. All right, verse 22. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan did not turn back, and the sword of Saul did not return empty. Saul and Jonathan, beloved and lovely and friends in their lives, and in their death they were not separated. They were swifter than eagles, and they were stronger than lions. Verse 24. O daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you luxuriously in scarlet and put ornaments of gold on your apparel. In verse 24, where it says luxuriously, other Bible literature says with jewelry. Verse 25, how the mighty have fallen in the midst of the battle. Jonathan lies slain upon your high places. Verse 26, I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. You have been a good friend to me. Your love toward me was more wonderful than the love of women. Verse 26, where it says love. Jonathan graciously accepted God's choice of David as the next ruler over Israel, and supported him, honored him, and wanted the very best for him. All right, verse 27. How the mighty have fallen, and the weapons of war have perished. All right, 2 Samuel chapter 2, the title is David made king over Judah. So it happened after this that David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go up with one of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said to him, Go up. David asked, Where shall I go? And he said, To Hebron. So David went up there to Hebron with his 2 wives also, Ahinoam of Jezreel, and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel in Judah. And David brought up his men who were with him, each one with his household, and they lived in the cities of Hebron. Then the men of Judah came, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. Then they told David, It was the men of Jabesh Gilead who buried Saul. Check out 1 Samuel chapter 31, verses 11 through 13. Verse 5. So David sent messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead and said to them, May you be blessed by the Lord, because you showed this graciousness and loyalty to Saul your Lord and King, and buried him. Now may the Lord show loving kindness and truth and faithfulness to you. I too will show this goodness to you, because you have done this thing. So now let your hands be strong and be valiant, for your lord Saul is dead, and also the house of Judah has anointed me king over them. 2 Samuel chapter 2, starting at verse 8, the title is Ishbosheth made king over Israel. And it says, Now Saul's cousin Abner, the son of Ner, commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim. In verse 8 where it says Mahanaim, this is a fortified city in Gilead, east of the river Jordan. Verse 9, he made him king over Gilead, over the Asherites, over Jezreel, over Ephraim, over Benjamin, even over all Israel except Judah. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he became king over Israel, and he reigned for 2 years. But the house of Judah followed David. And the time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. All right, 2 Samuel chapter 2, starting at verse 12, is civil war. And it says, Now Abner the son of Ner and the servants of Ishbosheth the son of Saul went out from Mahanaim to Gibeon. Joab, David's nephew, the son of Zeruiah, and the servants of David also went out and met them by the pool of Gibeon. They sat down with one group on one side of the pool and the other group on the other side of the pool. Then Abner said to Joab, Let the young men now stand and have a contest before us. And Joab said, Let them stand. In verse 14 where it says have a contest. Other Bible literature says make sport. All right, verse 15. So they stood up and went over by number, 12 for Benjamin and Ishbosheth the son of Saul, and 12 of the servants of David. Each one of them seized his opponent by the head and thrust his sword into his opponent's side. So they fell down together. Therefore that place was called Helkath Hazurim, that is, the field of sides, which is in Gibeon. There was a very fierce battle that day, and Abner and the men of Israel were beaten before the servants of David. 3 sons of Zeruiah, the half-sister of David, were there, Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. Now Asahel was as light and swift-footed as one of the wild gazelles in the field. Asahel pursued Abner and did not turn to the right or to the left as he followed him.
Really, is he? She's in the tree.
Verse 20. Then Abner looked behind him and said, Is that you, Asahel? And he answered, It is I. So Abner said to him, Turn to your right or to your left, and grab one of the young men and take his armor for yourself. But Asahel was not willing to turn away from pursuing Abner. Verse 22. Abner repeated again, Turn away from following me. Why should I have to strike you to the ground? How would I be able to face Joab, your brother, and look him in the eye? In verse 22, where it says, Be able. Other Bible literature says, Lift up my face. At verse 23. But Asahel refused to turn away, so Abner struck him in the abdomen with the butt end of his spear, and the spear came out his back. And he fell there and died on that spot. And it came about that everyone who came to the place where Asahel fell and died stood still and reflected. Verse 23, where it says, Butt end. Abner's strength was legendary. There was a saying in Jewish tradition that it was easier to move a wall 6 cubits or 9 feet thick than to move one of Abner's limbs. Verse 24. But Joab and Abishai, Asahel's brothers, pursued Abner. And when the sun was going down, they came to the hill of Ammah, which is in front of Giah, on the way to the wilderness of Gibeon. And the sons of the tribe of Benjamin gathered together toward Abner, and became one troop, and took their stand on the top of a hill. Then Abner called to Joab, "Must the sword devour forever? Do you not know that it will be bitter in the end? How long will it be before you tell the people to stop pursuing their brothers?" Joab said, "As God lives, if you had not spoken, then the people certainly would have stopped pursuing their brothers in the morning." So Joab blew the trumpet, and all the people halted and no longer pursued Israel, nor did they fight any more. Then Abner and his men went through the Arabah, the desert region, all that night, crossed the Jordan, went through Bethron, and walked the whole morning, and came to Mahanaim, where Ishbosheth ruled Israel. Joab returned from pursuing Abner, and when he had gathered all the people together, 19 of David's servants were missing, besides Asahel. But the servants of David had struck down many of Benjamin and Abner's men, so that 360 men died. And they picked up the body of Asahel and buried him in the tomb of his father in Bethlehem. Then Joab and his men walked all night, and they arrived in Hebron at daybreak.